Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Jamaica earned the dubious title of second most murderous country in the Caribbean. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 20th April 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Natalia Clark of CVM Live reports that Jamaica's murder rate is at around 53 murders per 1,000 people. A recent global report puts the country 10th on an international list in reference to the rate of crime.
Commissioner of Police Major General Anthony Anderson has attributed the incessant issue plaguing the country to several key factors. The first being access to illegally obtained money.
So all of a sudden, rather than gang leaders controlling firearms and criminal organizations determining how these firearms are used, we find that young persons who are involved in this trade are actually using their money to purchase firearms, and those firearms are playing out in their rivalries on the streets.
He adds, while Jamaica is not a destination country for drugs, the island is being used as a transshipment hub, further inviting and expanding criminal organizations and their illicit activities on the island. He likens these gangs to terrorists.
These gangs create such a degree of terror within our communities that perhaps some of them could be cast as more criminal terrorists. Not terrorists that are looking for some state outcomes, political outcomes, but in terms of using terror and fear as a means of control, they definitely fall into that group.
The commissioner, who was speaking at the regional symposium on violence as a public health issue, the crime challenge in Trinidad and Tobago Monday, describes the problem as one that must be stopped. He highlights some key findings.
85% of murders committed in Jamaica are committed with an illegal firearm. The victims and perpetrators of violent crimes fall within the same young person demographic. And thirdly, that males are 9 times more likely to be killed violently than females in Jamaica.
Reporting for CVM Live, I'm Natalia Clark.
In related crime news, a declaration has bbeen made at a recent CARICOM summit on crime and criminal activities in the region for the United States to control the flow of illegal weapons into the region. Kalisha Williams of TVJ News tells us more.
Leaders from the Caribbean Community and Common Market, CARICOM, gathered in Trinidad on Monday to discuss one of the most pressing issues in the region, crime. And while the leaders argued that improving their national crime-fighting strategies is important, an appeal for the United States to do more in stemming the flow of illegal weapons to the region. First, from the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Philip Davis.
You would have heard evidence of one Bahamian American who would have bought 46 weapons that would have been in a period of less than 2 months. We discovered that they had 9 of them were used in the Bahamas. We made that known to the U.S., but what has happened to that person? Nothing.
While Mr. Davis indicated that he will not get involved in Americans' constitutional right to bear arms, he said it cannot mean that residents in the states also get a right to traffic those arms.
And that has been the theme that I've been impressing upon them. Now, in recent times, they've passed an act that speaks to the straw purchases, etc. But I don't think they've gone far enough in that regard.
It was also revealed that states like Texas, Florida, Georgia, and others with a strong Caribbean diaspora are the ones trafficking most of the guns to the region. Prime Minister Andrew Holness stressed the importance of CARICOM leaders joining forces to pressure the United States to address gun trafficking.
As we have assisted them in the war on drugs, they must assist us in the war on guns. It is the greatest unfairness that we have diverted resources from other areas in which we could have spent it to fund and support a war on drugs. By the way, the two things are related.
Mr. Holness said it appears the United States has no real interest in stopping the other part of the guns for drugs trade in the Caribbean.
The guns fuel crime. They are an accelerant. They are needed to protect drugs that are transshipped through our borders. They are then turned to deal with other forms of criminal activities. We have seen in Jamaica where the weapon of choice is no longer the AK-47. It is the AR-15, it is the Glock. These are guns that are manufactured in North America.
The symposium, dubbed Violence as a Public Health Issue, the Crime Challenge, is expected to end tomorrow. Kelisha Williams, TVJ News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. The Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago has come out in support of the judges and magistrates who serve on the bench in the Republic and in the rest of CARICOM. The Law Association has done so in response to concerns raised by heads of government who attended CARICOM's two-day symposium on crime as a public health concern. This as the CARICOM heads have agreed to undertake certain actions with regard to the justice system in the region. TV6's political editor Joel Brown reports.
In their declaration on crime and violence as a public health issue, CARICOM heads of government, including Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, agreed that they undertake comprehensive overhaul of the criminal justice system to address criminal terrorists with a focus on proactive management of prosecutions, sentencing, and the diversion of young people at risk. The CARICOM heads agreed to that and other measures after their two-day symposium on crime as a public health issue, which took place at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Port of Spain, where the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, and the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, raised specific concerns about the criminal justice system in the region. In a statement, the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago said the judiciary must remain open to constructive criticism, but that what it called random and unreasoned ridicule will serve only to undermine confidence in the very judiciary upon whom we all depend, our regional leaders included, for the due and timely delivery of justice. An apparent reference to statements made by CARICOM heads during the symposium, such as those made by Prime Minister Mottley.
This is when I practiced law, nobody got bailed for murder. I was practicing criminal law up until 30 years ago. Nobody, I look young, but I still have a little age on me. People did not get bailed for murder. Now, when I look at the stats, not just out of Bahamas, but in Barbados and all through the region, the people who are causing the greatest problems are charged with 2, 3, and 4 murders. Something is fundamentally wrong.
The Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago said it deprecates the recent attempts by regional political leaders to ridicule judges for their decisions to grant bail to persons charged with murder, and worse yet, suggest that they tend to favor the clients of certain unidentified lawyers. The Law Association also appeared to be directly responding to comments made by Prime Minister Gonsalves.
Too many judges have allowed too many lawyers who practice criminal law to control the court system under the guise of protecting the rights of the accused person.
The Law Association said a person who is arrested and charged with a criminal offense is not presumed to be guilty of the offense, and that the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago enshrines the rights of a person charged with a criminal offense to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. It noted that the criminal justice landscape is littered with cases in which the prosecution has failed to prove their case and a not guilty verdict is returned, or in which the Director of Public Prosecutions determines, for one reason or another, to discontinue a charge. The Law Association further said persons charged with an offense who are denied bail always run the risk of being deprived of their liberty for the increasingly long periods it takes for a case to come to trial and then to be exonerated at the conclusion of the trial process. It continues, this is why the Constitution also guarantees the right not to be denied reasonable bail without just cause. The Law Association said judges cannot simply decide not to grant a bail altogether, and that, no doubt, there will be occasions where persons released on bail would have gone on to engage in criminal activity. However, the Law Association said that is no reason to castigate judges and magistrates for doing the job the Constitution requires them to do and for upholding the sacred constitutional rights to which we are all entitled. Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
The Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago, in the meantime, says, at some level, we need to trust our judicial officers to exercise discretion with regard to granting of bail. Chief Justice Ivor Archie was responding to concerns about the granting of bail and constant adjournments in certain criminal matters within the Caribbean community raised by heads of government of CARICOM. Jewel Brown again of TV6 News reports.
Speaking with journalists off camera while he attended CARICOM's regional symposium, which examined violent crime as a public health issue, Chief Justice Ivor Archie wanted to make one thing very clear.
At some level, we need to trust our judicial officers to exercise discretion. We have all been lawyers for some time, and many of us spent a decade or more as prosecutors. So we understand what we need to do. I think you on a slippery constitutional slope when you let any agency other than the judiciary decide on people's freedoms, and it is built into our constitution, which says that you have a constitutional right not to be denied bail without reasonable cause.
TV6 News sought a response from Chief Justice Archie about a call from the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, for judges and magistrates to, in the Prime Minister's words, regain control of their courts again. That in his view, criminal lawyers, and use different phrases, but basically those lawyers who practice criminal law, in his view, seem to be more in control of courts within the region. He didn't specifically say one part of CARICOM or the other, but that's his view. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, as a principle of case flow management, agendas and timelines have to be court-driven. Because if we surrender control of the courts to lawyers or anybody else, then of course we will not be able to process matters efficiently. I think it's a valid comment that perhaps there has been in the past a culture, a lax culture with regard to adjournments. That's one of the things we are seeking to address, especially with the criminal procedure rules and the structures that we are putting in.
The Chief Justice also responded to particular concerns raised by the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, about the granting of bail in certain criminal matters by the courts within CARICOM.
And I don't think anybody has suggested that if an offender has a particular profile that suggests that that person is likely to be an ongoing offender, that they should get bail. You will recall that last year there was all the concern and noise about murderers walking free. How many people accused of murder have actually gotten bail in the last year? Because
the Chief Justice said it is a balancing act.
At the moment, we do the best balancing act that we could. You have to distinguish, for example, between crime, passion, and things which are unlikely to recur, and gang activity.
Chief Justice Archie said those parameters have always been in the bail law. Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
The main opposition party in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is expressing alarm at the escalating levels of violent crime in recent times, most of which are committed by firearms.
The New Democratic Party, NDP, In a statement, said the crime situation has Vincentians alarmed following 2 recent murders. On April 11, Jomo top dog Rudy died after being shot in Pole Yard on the previous day. The NDP says death brought the homicide count in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to 11 for the year. Then, on April 14, Queens Drive businessman Michael Richard died in a hail of bullets, raising the homicide count to 12. In 2022, the record-breaking count of 42 homicides left the government unfazed, unapologetic, and lost as to adequate response. The opposition says Vincentians await some solace from those in authority. The NDP is accusing the Minister of National Security of failing in his promise to be tough on crime and the causes of crime. The political party states crime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a crisis that affects everyone and will require a national collaboration to address it.
Hubbard's is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbardshardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.